I'm Melissa Grant, 37 years old, and 3 years ago I stood barefoot in the hallway of my newly purchased beach house, staring at floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto the Pacific Ocean. The soft hush of the waves reminded me of every sacrifice it had taken to get there. 12-hour days, sleepless nights, scrubbing candle wax out of tablecloths after high-end weddings. This house was more than a getaway. It was the first thing in my life that was fully mine. So when my younger sister asked to borrow it for a weekend just to film a quick promo video, I said yes, even though my gut told me not to. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from in the comments and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to set boundaries with someone who thought your hard work belonged to them too. I grew up just outside Portland, Oregon, in a neighborhood where the houses were close together and people borrowed sugar without asking. I was the oldest daughter of 2 working parents. Mom. Karen was a nurse who often came home with tired eyes and stories she couldn't tell. And my dad, Dennis, ran a local auto shop, the kind with a hand-painted sign and a calendar from 1993 still pinned to the wall. We were never wealthy, but we had enough for what mattered. My parents taught me to be reliable, to show up early, and stay late to fix what could be fixed and carry what couldn't. Chloe came along when I was 8, and from the beginning she lived in a different world. She was bright and bold and quick with a smile, and our parents saw magic in her where they only expected strength from me when Chloe knocked over a vase or scribbled on the walls. Mom said she was expressive when I forgot to unload the dishwasher. I got a lecture about responsibility. That difference wasn't cruel. Not exactly. It just wore on me like a shirt that didn't quite fit. By the time I was 15, I was clearing tables at a diner and saving for community college while Chloe was at home making up dances in the living room. I moved to Seattle after college, starting at the bottom of an event planning firm with a shared cubicle and a calendar full of weekend weddings. The work was demanding, the kind of job where a single typo in the seating chart could unravel hours of planning. But I was good at it. I built a reputation and climbed fast by my early 30s. I was managing high-profile events for West Coast tech companies, running teams and pitching million-dollar budgets. Still, I never forgot what it felt like to stretch $50 over 2 weeks and keep a smile on your face while doing it. What I wanted, more than anything, was a quiet place to call my own, a space that felt like a reward, not just a break. So every few months I'd drive down the coast on weekends, sipping gas station coffee and touring listings that were always too small or too damp or too expensive. Until one rainy Saturday I founded a clean-lined modern home with tall windows and a wraparound deck perched just above the shoreline. In a quiet corner of Cannon Beach, it wasn't flashy, but it was perfect. I signed the papers on my 34th birthday. I spent the next year making it mine. Every piece of furniture was chosen slowly and paid for in cash. A dark leather couch with firm cushions, a dining table made of reclaimed wood like the one my grandmother used to sit at when she told stories during holidays. I planted lavender and seagrass along the back fence and hung artwork from local galleries. The first time I hosted a friend there, they said it felt like the house breathed. That's how I knew I'd done it right. Chloe's life moved differently. She tried a little bit of everything, modeling for a while, then blogging, then retail. She lived with our parents on and off, working part-time and building a social media following that never quite took off. She wasn't lazy, just quick to lose interest when things got hard. And even now in her late 20s, our mom still paid for her cell phone and car insurance. Dad just kept his head down, said she'll figure it out like he always did. So when Chloe mentioned during brunch one Sunday that she was pitching a brand deal and needed a scenic location to shoot, I should have seen it coming. She leaned across the table, eyes bright, and said, "Melissa, your beach house would be perfect." Mom chimed in before I could answer. "You're barely using it this time of year anyway, right?" I hesitated, thinking about the wine stain she left on my apartment rug last year. But Chloe waved me off, just me and a couple friends. "We'll be careful." And when Mom added, "Come on, honey, it's family," I gave in. I spent the next few days texting instructions, answering questions, and finally driving 4 hours after work to meet her there Thursday night. I stocked the fridge, folded towels, set out a bottle of wine as a welcome. I walked her through the smart locks and showed her the binder I'd made with emergency contacts and house rules. She barely looked up from her phone, but smiled when I handed her the keys. "You're the best, sis," she said, and I wanted to believe her. What happened next changed everything. I got back to Seattle late Friday afternoon, groggy from travel and trying to stay focused on the weekend client event ahead. That night, around 10, my phone buzzed with a text from Marilyn Cross, my neighbor at Cannon Beach. "Hey, Melissa, is everything okay down at your place? There's music blasting and cars out front. Looks like some kind of party." I stared at the message for a moment, then tapped out a quick response asking if she could describe it. No reply from Chloe when I tried to call, just voicemail. I sent a text instead. "You promised no crowds. Turn it down now." I didn't get a response. Marilyn messaged again near midnight. "Quieter now, but there are still a lot of cars. Just wanted to let you know." I thanked her, apologized, said I'd handle it. I barely slept. My phone was beside me the whole night, screen lighting up with notifications. Nothing from Chloe. Saturday morning, I stopped at a corner cafe near the event site in Chicago. I was halfway through a cup of burnt coffee when I opened Instagram. Chloe's story popped up right at the top. The first clip hit me like a punch, my living room packed with people. Music thumping, lights flashing. Strangers with red plastic cups dancing, laughing, knocking into furniture. A quick pan of the shot showed someone perched on my leather sofa, the one I'd waited years to buy. There was a long rip along the seam, the stuffing visible. My breath caught. The next clip was worse. Chloe striking poses in front of the dining table. Not just any table, my grandmother's table. Burn marks darkened the center, like someone had set a candle down and walked away. People were spilling drinks near it, tossing confetti that clung to the floors. Another story post showed two girls painting a fabric banner across the garden fence. Paint cans balanced on top of crushed seagrass and uprooted lavender. My heart pounded as I swiped through each one. In the background of one shot, I spotted the side table I'd kept in memory of my grandmother. It had a blackened corner, like it had caught fire and been put out too late. I couldn't look away. I clicked through tagged photos and reels. My kitchen counters were now a bar. People I'd never seen before were mixing drinks on the marble. Someone had dragged down one of the abstract paintings and left it cracked on the floor. My garden, what I'd spent hours planting and tending, looked like a path after a storm. Mud-broken stems, shoe prints everywhere. I tried calling Chloe again, straight to voicemail. I sent her another message, short and blunt. "What are you doing? You're destroying the house." Then I called Lauren. She picked up fast. I didn't even say hello, just said, "Look at her stories. Look at what she's doing to my house." I was holding back tears. Lauren scrolled in silence. She ruined everything I said, finally. She didn't even ask. Lauren's voice sharpened. "You need to get back there. Now. This isn't just messy. This is full-on reckless." A few minutes later, I got a call from Karen Weller, the manager at the interior design store in Portland, where I'd ordered most of the pieces for the house. She sounded uneasy. "Melissa, we saw your house in a couple of videos that are going around," she said. "We recognize several items from your order. I'm afraid we have to report that some of them appear to be beyond repair." She listed them. The sofa, the dining table, 2 framed pieces. "Our estimate to replace and restore everything is about $25,000. I sat still, phone to my ear, the sounds of the cafe fading behind me. $25,000. I told her to proceed with the hold for the initial estimate. My hands were cold as I signed off the call. I had an event walkthrough that afternoon, but I couldn't focus. My client asked if I was all right. I told him it was a family thing. It wasn't a lie. By evening, I'd changed my flight. I paid triple for a last-minute return to Portland, then rented a car from the airport and started the 4-hour drive to the coast. I don't remember much of that drive, just the sound of the tires on pavement and the ocean of thoughts crowding in. When I pulled up to the house Sunday morning, the first thing I saw were tire tracks across the lawn. Cans and crushed cups littered the driveway. One of the garden chairs had a missing leg tossed sideways near the porch. The deck railing had a black smear across it, Maybe ash, maybe paint. I stepped up to the door and took a breath. The handle felt sticky. When I opened it, the smell hit me hard. Stale liquor smoke, something sour underneath. Inside the living room looked like it had been ransacked. The sofa had 2 deep gashes, stuffing pushed out like cotton. My coffee table was smeared with something sticky. The artwork that had hung near the fireplace now leaned against the wall, the frame bent and cracked. Glitter and confetti were ground into the floorboards. The kitchen was worse. My marble counters were dulled, coated with residue. The blender I kept under the sink lay shattered by the fridge. A cabinet door hung crooked. The dining table, my grandmother's table, was scorched. Not just a mark, but a black melted stain in the wood. Upstairs, the beds were unmade, the linens stained with makeup and something else. A guest lamp had been knocked over and left in pieces. I stepped into the master bedroom. Paint white, thick, and still slightly tacky had been spilled on my duvet. My jewelry box was open, and the necklace I kept from college was missing. I stood on the stairs, my hand on the banister, and tried to steady my breath. Then I took out my phone and started taking photos, room by room, corner by corner, every piece of damage, every item out of place. When I stepped outside, Marilyn was waiting at the bottom of the driveway. She looked tired. "We called the sheriff," she said. "Friday night. Chloe said she had your permission, so they just told her to keep the noise down. It quieted for a bit, then started again. Saturday. I thanked her. I didn't know what else to say. Later that afternoon, I called my insurance agent. He was sympathetic but firm. If the damage was caused intentionally by a guest or their invitees, we can't cover it under standard homeowners. You'll need to pursue them directly." I hung up and sent everything, photos, invoices, screen grabs, to Lauren. "She's going to pay for this," I typed. Lauren replied immediately. "Then it's time to stop asking and start demanding." That night I sat on the deck looking at the ocean through smudged glass. The lavender was trampled, the chairs knocked over, but the waves still moved steady in the distance. Chloe had crossed a line and I wasn't going to clean up after her this time. I called my mom the next morning, still staring at the mess Chloe had left behind. I stood out on the deck phone pressed to my ear, the smell of smoke and salt air clinging to everything. When she answered, I didn't waste time. "Mom," I said, "Chloe wrecked my house." I kept my voice steady. "The furniture's destroyed. The art's broken. It looks like a storm came through here." There was a pause on the line, then she gave a soft, almost amused sigh. "Oh, Melissa, I'm sure it's not that bad," she said. "She told me she was filming something creative. You know how she gets when she's inspired." I turned toward the lawn where the grass was streaked with tire marks. "There were strangers here, Mom," I said. "They damaged thousands of dollars worth of things. She burned Grandma's table." My mother didn't raise her voice, but her words landed just the same. "Well, she's trying to build something," she said. "And you've always been good at handling these things." I didn't respond right away. I watched a piece of confetti catch on the breeze and float across the deck. "I'm not cleaning this up for her," I said. My mother's tone stayed light, but I heard the undercurrent. "Melissa, don't make this into something bigger than it is." I hung up and called my dad. I figured if anyone might understand, maybe he would. But when he picked up, I got the usual quiet voice and roundabout phrases. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," he said. "You and your mom should probably talk this out." He didn't ask for details. He didn't offer help. I said goodbye and put the phone down. That Monday, I was back in Seattle. I had a corporate event to oversee downtown, but I moved through it like a ghost. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Chloe to call to explain, to apologize, anything. Instead, hours went by until I finally got a voice note. Her tone was breezy. "Hey, sis, chill. It was just a few friends helping with the video. Things got a little wild. I'll clean it up. No big deal." I stared at the screen, listening again to make sure I'd heard right. No apology, no acknowledgement, just the same old shrug. That night, I sat with Lauren at her place and showed her everything. The photos I'd taken, the estimate from the furniture store, screenshots from Chloe's posts. "They're acting like I'm being dramatic." I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Lauren didn't flinch. She set down her glass and leaned forward. Melissa, this is outrageous. Chloe trashed your house, and your mom is acting like you should thank her for it. I didn't say anything. I just kept scrolling through the photos on my phone. Lauren's voice cut through the silence. You've always cleaned up after them, she said. It's time to stop. She was right. I wasn't just upset, I was done. Lauren gave me the name of a property attorney in the city, Daniel Hughes. She said he was sharp, direct, didn't waste time. I booked an appointment for the next morning and met him at his office downtown. It was a small space on the 3rd floor of a quiet brick building. He offered me coffee, which I declined, and gestured for me to sit. I laid out everything: photos, estimates, screenshots from Chloe's account. Can I hold her accountable, I asked. Daniel flipped through the pages, nodding now and then. Since she was a guest and caused the damage, yes, he said. You can pursue her directly. Your parents aren't legally on the hook, but she is. And if she refuses to pay, we move forward with a formal claim. I left his office with a folder of documents and a clear plan. That night I opened my laptop and started drafting an email. I addressed it to all 3, Mom, Dad, and Chloe. The tone was professional. I laid out the date of the incident, the amount of damage, and attached the furniture report. I included Daniel's contact information and gave a clear deadline payment in full within 30 days. Then I hit send. The first reply came from Chloe. One line. You're joking, right? I'm not paying that. The next morning my mom called. Her voice was clipped. Melissa, this is ridiculous. You're making a mountain out of nothing. It was just a video shoot. You've got the money to fix it. I stayed calm. Mom, this isn't about the money. This is about responsibility. There was a pause, then a sigh. She's struggling, Melissa. She's trying to find her path. Why can't you support her like we've supported you? I didn't answer. I knew that wouldn't go anywhere. My dad didn't respond at all. Not a call, not a message, just silence. That Friday, I drove down to Portland for our usual family dinner. Mom insisted on keeping the tradition even after everything. I showed up on time carrying a salad I'd made, trying to stay calm. Mom greeted me with a short hug, already talking about her new book club. Dad was in his recliner, half watching the news. Chloe arrived late, tossed her purse on the couch, and grabbed a seltzer from the fridge without looking at me. We sat down to dinner. Mom had set the table with her good plates, the ones she only used when things were tense. We made it through the salad course with small talk and awkward silences. Chloe talked about her latest Instagram collaboration, tossing her hair and smiling like nothing had happened. I waited until the table quieted. Then I set my fork down. We need to talk about the beach house, I said. The damage came out to $25,000. I sent you the estimate. The table froze. Chloe rolled her eyes. Here we go, she muttered. It was a shoot, Melissa. Stuff happens. I kept my tone steady. You invited strangers. They destroyed my sofa, burned the table, and wrecked the garden. That's not stuff happens. That's reckless. Before she could respond, Mom jumped in. You're making this sound like it was intentional. Chloe was trying to create something. You've always been so hard on her. I looked at her. Mom, you saw the photos. That wasn't art. That was destruction. Dad cleared his throat. Don't you have insurance for this kind of thing? It feels like a lot of fuss. Insurance won't cover it, I said. Chloe is liable. She invited the people. Chloe leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Liable? What is this, court? She gave a short laugh. It was a party. Relax. The room fell quiet. Mom reached for my hand. Melissa, you've done so well for yourself. With your career, this shouldn't be such a burden. Chloe's still finding her way. Dad looked up. Let's not blow this out of proportion. You've always been the responsible one. Remember when Chloe scratched your car at 16? You handled that without making it a federal case. I folded my napkin. I paid for that repair myself. I was 17. Chloe's 29. This is different. Chloe scoffed. Not everyone's obsessed with being perfect like you, Melissa. Some of us actually enjoy life. The argument spiraled. Mom kept defending her. Dad kept minimizing. Chloe kept pushing, half apologizing, half accusing. But none of them acknowledged what had actually happened. I stood smoothing the fabric of my blouse. "I sent you the bill," I said. "This isn't up for debate." Mom looked at me with wet eyes. "You're tearing the family apart over money." I looked at each of them. "It's not about money, it's about respect." Then I picked up my purse and walked out. Back in Seattle, I called Lauren from my apartment the same night I left the dinner in Portland. I hadn't even changed clothes yet, just dropped my bag by the door and sat at the kitchen table. "They think I'll just let it go," I told her. "They're pretending like none of it matters." She didn't hesitate. "Then it's time to make it matter," she said. "You need to lay it all out. Show them you're serious." Her voice was calm but firm. "Pull everything together. Numbers, photos, legal backup. And if they still ignore it, go public." I spent the next few nights treating it like a project. I worked late the same way I did for high-stakes clients, except this time it was personal. I opened a new folder on my desktop, labeled it Cannon Beach Report, and filled it with every photo I'd taken of the damaged close-ups of the torn sofa, the cracked frame, the blackened stain on the dining table. I added the furniture store's estimate, the contractor's repair quote screenshots from Chloe's posts, and the letter from Daniel Hughes. Everything totaled up to $25,000 even. It didn't feel real until I saw it all in one place. When I felt ready, I called Daniel again. We reviewed the materials together over Zoom. He looked through each section, making small notes, adjusting the formatting of the demand letter. "Your documentation is solid," he said. "This isn't emotional, it's factual. If they ignore this, you have options." His voice was steady the way it had been in our first meeting. "But make it clear 30 days to pay, or we file." That night, I added the final edits and printed 3 copies of the full report. I bound them in simple black folders and tucked them into my work bag. Then I emailed a digital version to myself just in case. Lauren called while I was organizing everything. "Set the meeting," she said. "Make them sit down and look you in the eye." I texted my mom, my dad, and Chloe the next morning. "I'd like to meet this Sunday at 3 p.m. We need to resolve the Cannon Beach damage. I'll bring everything." My mom replied first. "Melissa, let's not drag this out." Chloe didn't respond at all. My dad sent back one word. "Fine." By Sunday, I was ready. I wore a slate gray blazer and black slacks. Nothing flashy, just sharp and quiet. Lauren called before I left. "Stick to the facts," she said. "No guilt, no backing down." I left the apartment around noon and made the 3-hour drive down I-5 without turning on the radio once. When I arrived at the condo, my mom opened the door with a tight smile. "You didn't need to bring all that," she said, nodding at the folder under my arm. My dad was in his usual spot, flipping through a car magazine on the couch. Chloe was leaning against the kitchen island, scrolling on her phone. No one offered coffee or water. I walked in, set my folder down on the coffee table, and waited until they'd all gathered around. "Thanks for meeting," I said, keeping my voice even. "This is about the $25,000 in damages at the Cannon Beach house. I've prepared documentation for everything." I opened the folder and passed copies to each of them. Photos, contractor estimates, receipts from the furniture store. Daniel Hughes reviewed it all. He's a property attorney. Chloe looked at the packet for maybe 5 seconds, then tossed it back on the table. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. "This is absurd. It was a video shoot, not some demolition crew. You're acting like I burned the place down." I turned to her. "You invited strangers. They trashed everything. That's not a shoot. That's negligence." My mom leaned forward. "Melissa, let's not escalate. Chloe's trying to build something. We're family. Can't we find a softer way through this?" I shook my head. "She hasn't apologized. She hasn't offered to fix a single thing." My dad set down his magazine. "You're being too harsh," he said. "You've got a great job. Why make a mountain out of this?" "It's not about my job," I said. "It's about accountability. Chloe caused the damage. She's responsible for repairing it." Chloe stood up, cheeks flushed. "You're jealous," she said. "I'm actually chasing something real and you hate that. You've always hated that." She grabbed her purse and walked out, slamming the door hard behind her. Silence fell over the room. My mom stared at the folder, her hands trembling slightly. "Melissa, you're breaking this family over furniture," I answered slowly. "It's not about the furniture. It's about being treated with respect." My dad rubbed his temples. "This feels like a trap, like you planned all this." I gestured to the binder. "There's no trap. There's just the truth. You can call the contractor. You can call Daniel. It's all there." My mom turned the page, pausing at the photos of the table. "She can't afford this," she whispered. I nodded. "Then we figure something out. But someone has to pay." That house wasn't free, and neither is the damage. There was no agreement that day, no signature, no check, just a quiet room and 3 people flipping through a folder they never thought I'd bring. When I got back to Seattle, I was exhausted but steady. Lauren called that night. "How did it go?" she asked. "They didn't take it seriously," I said. "Then maybe it's time to make it public." I didn't answer right away. Putting it online felt risky. But Chloe hadn't owned up to anything, and my parents kept pretending it wasn't a big deal. That night, I drafted a short post for Instagram. Last month, my vacation home was damaged during a so-called video shoot. The total loss is $25,000. I've asked for accountability. So far, I've received none. I attached a photo of the damaged sofa blurred slightly to keep things private and clicked post. The reaction came quickly. Friends, coworkers, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years started commenting. "That's awful. You deserve better. Hold them accountable." The support was immediate and louder than I expected. By midweek, Chloe finally texted, "You're embarrassing me. Take that post down." I wrote back, "Pay the bill and I will." She didn't reply. The next evening, my mom called. Her voice was softer than before. "Melissa," she said, "I saw what you posted. This has gone too far." I braced for another defense, but then she added, "I've been too easy on her. I'll cover the cost from my savings. I don't want this to break us." I sat quietly on the line, unsure how to respond. "I was wrong," she said. "I didn't take you seriously. I should have." The next morning, I received a notification, a direct deposit for $25,000 from her account. No note, no message, just the transaction. I called Lauren later that night. "She paid," I said, "but Chloe's off the hook again." "She may be," Lauren said, "but you're not. You did what they never expected. You stood up." I looked out the window at the lights of the city, feeling something shift. The payment was a step. But I wasn't finished. With the $25,000 wired into my account, the first thing I did was call the contractors I'd been holding off on. They came out to the house that same week, walking through the damage with quiet nods and careful notes. The leather sofa was replaced with a sturdier one in deep navy, the hardwood floors sanded and sealed, the walls repainted in the same calming shade of gray I'd chosen when I first moved in. The garden was stripped down and replanted fresh lavender new seagrass, a small row of rosemary just outside the kitchen window. The table, the one my grandmother had passed down, was taken to a local craftsman. He couldn't undo the scorch mark, but he sanded it down and worked the remaining wood into a soft patina. It didn't look exactly like before, but it felt like it had survived something. By June, the house looked whole again. I drove down one weekend just to sit on the deck. The breeze off the ocean felt different, like the place had shifted in some small, unspoken way. It still looked like my retreat, but it no longer felt untouched. It had scars now, and so did I. When I got back to Seattle, Lauren and I met up for dinner on a Thursday night. We hadn't seen each other in person since the dust settled. She raised her glass and said, "To drawing lines and standing tall." I smiled, but something still tugged at me. I'd gotten the money. But the silence afterward, the lack of apology, the way it all just faded into the background that hadn't gone anywhere. Later that weekend, I found myself scrolling through the comments on my original Instagram post. Most people had moved on. But one message caught my eye. A woman from Arizona wrote, "Your story helped me confront my brother about using my retirement fund without permission. Thank you for reminding me I wasn't crazy." That message stayed with me. I started reading more of the replies. People talked about sisters who borrowed cars and never returned them, cousins who moved in and never paid rent, parents who defended the ones who caused the most damage. That Sunday night, I opened a blank page on my laptop and typed a title: Setting Boundaries When Family Stops Feeling Safe. I didn't know what I was writing exactly. I just knew I had something to say. I wrote about the house, the damages, the way Chloe dismissed it as just a shoot. I wrote about the moment at dinner when my mom reached for my hand and said, "You've got the money." I wrote about the guilt that came with saying no and the clarity that followed when I didn't take it back. By the time I looked up, it was almost midnight. I posted the entry to a free blog site under my full name, Melissa Grant. No fancy formatting, no photos, just words. 3 days later, I checked back and saw that it had been shared over 700 times. I added a second post. This one was shorter. The first time I let go of being the peacemaker. Then a third. Apologies that never came and why I stopped waiting. The emails started soon after. Women in their 50s, 60s, sometimes even older, telling me about the moments they stayed silent. A few younger ones, too, new moms, daughters, women trying to hold families together with both hands. One message came from a woman in Vermont. Her sister had stolen from her. Their mom told her to drop it for the sake of peace. She wrote, "Your story gave me permission to stop pretending." I forwarded it to Lauren. She replied, "You're building something." By July, the blog had regular readers. A small group at first, then bigger. I set up a newsletter. I kept writing, 1 post a week, sometimes about the house, sometimes about the years before, the ones where I always offered to drive or cover the bill or explain Chloe's mistakes to other people so she wouldn't have to. That month, I got a call from my mom. She asked to meet halfway at a quiet cafe just off the highway between Portland and Seattle. It was warm out that day, but she wore a light scarf and held her tea like she needed the heat. We talked about small things first. Her book club, my new client project. Then she looked at me and said, "I've been reading your blog." I didn't know what to say. I waited. "I think I've been protecting Chloe so long I didn't see what it cost you." She stirred her tea once, twice. "I thought I was keeping peace in the family. I didn't realize I was letting you carry everything." The street noise outside faded for a moment. I said I just wanted to feel seen. She nodded quietly. "I see you now." It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, just a moment of quiet understanding between two women who had spent years speaking past each other. I drove home with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair. I didn't feel lighter exactly, but I felt steady. Chloe didn't reach out after the payment cleared. She didn't comment on the blog or text. Her Instagram went back to normal fashion collabs, product links, selfies at brunch. Then in September, I got a message from her. Just a sentence. "Hey, sis. Sorry about the house. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't respond. Not right away. Lauren called when I told her. "That's something," she said. "Not everything, but something." I wasn't sure. It felt more like a draft than a letter, but still it was more than I expected. That same month, I got a surprise visit at the beach house. I'd driven down alone for a quiet weekend and was cleaning up after lunch when I heard a truck pull into the gravel drive. My dad stepped out holding a framed canvas wrapped in butcher paper. "Thought your place might have a spot for this," he said. He didn't stay long. Walked through the house, nodded at the repairs. "Looks good," he said, hands in his pockets. Then he got back in the truck and left. The painting was one of his seascape waves crashing under a pale sky. It's hanging now above the fireplace, just to the right of the kitchen. In early October, something shifted at work. We were pitching a large-scale corporate event for a client known for being demanding tech executives, long timelines, high stakes. In the planning meeting, someone from the client's team pushed back on our creative direction. I listened, let them finish, then said calmly, "This is our plan and it's non-negotiable." The room went quiet. My team watched me surprised. The client nodded. We moved forward. Later that week, my boss pulled me aside and offered me a raise. "You've stepped into a new gear," she said. I didn't tell her where that gear had come from. Around the same time, I met someone. Ryan worked in design graphic mostly. We crossed paths through a mutual friend at a community fundraiser in Capitol Hill. He had a quiet confidence and asked thoughtful questions. We talked for a while near the coffee stand, and by the end of the night he asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. I said yes, not because I was looking, but because for the first time in a while I wasn't. We took things slowly. He understood boundaries without needing them spelled out. When I mentioned I'd been through a rough year with family, he didn't ask for details. He just listened and let the silence sit where it needed to. We started spending weekends together cooking simple dinners, sharing playlists, watching the fairy lights from his balcony. It wasn't loud or fast. It felt steady. Meanwhile, the beach house took on a new rhythm. I listed the guest rooms online, choosing quiet weeks to open the space to travelers. Most were couples on long weekends or solo visitors needing a reset. The reviews were kind words like peaceful, restorative, thoughtful touches. That part made me smile. I didn't need the income, but the idea that the space was helping people feel grounded gave the house a new kind of energy. I invited Lauren down one weekend in mid-October. She brought a bottle of wine and a new novel, and we sat on the deck with blankets across our laps, talking late into the night. At one point, she looked out over the dark horizon and said, "This place feels like you again." I didn't answer right away. I just watched the ocean. The house had been reclaimed, but I was still learning how to feel at ease inside it again. Laura Mitchell, a colleague from work, came down the next month for a small retreat. We held an informal strategy session in the dining room, the restored table gleaming in the morning light. Marilyn Cross, my neighbor, stopped by with banana bread and sat for coffee. She and her husband had become regular visitors, sometimes just dropping by to check in, sometimes staying for an afternoon chat. It reminded me that not all relationships had to be repaired. Some were just quietly built. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, things had settled. Mom invited everyone to the condo, same as every year. I thought about saying no, but something told me it was time. Chloe arrived on time for once, carrying a pie from a local bakery. She didn't make a scene. She didn't bring up the house. She asked about my blog, complimented my dress, and helped clear the plates. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was something. During dinner, Dad asked how work was going. He didn't offer a speech or a correction, just listened while I explained the upcoming winter event schedule. Mom served her usual spread turkey, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, and didn't act like it was a burden. Chloe stayed quieter than usual, more observant. At one point, I caught her looking at me across the table. She didn't say anything, but her expression had softened. The next morning, Mom stepped out onto the balcony where I was sipping coffee in the cold air. She wore a scarf and held her mug with both hands. "I read your latest post," she said. Her voice was quiet. "You're helping people, Melissa. I'm proud of you." I looked at her, unsure what to say. She added, "Your grandmother always told you to stand up for yourself. I think she'd like what you're doing." We didn't hug. We didn't make a promise to never slip back into old patterns. But in that moment, something between us mended just a little more. As we drove back to Seattle that afternoon, I watched the trees shift from gold to green. Ryan was behind the wheel, humming along to a song on the radio. I leaned my head against the window and thought about the months that had passed. The house, the silence, the decision to draw a line, and how each time I stood my ground, the path forward got a little clearer. In November, I walked into the annual winter planning summit for our firm with a new kind of calm. The team I led was presenting 3 proposals for a regional tech client, and we were competing against 2 larger firms for the contract. Midway through the presentation, the client's CFO interrupted with a list of last-minute changes. I listened, nodded once, then said, "We can adjust if the changes align with the budget and timeline, but we won't compromise the outcome." The room stayed silent for a beat too long, but no one pushed back. We won the contract that afternoon. That same week, I got a message from a women's leadership forum asking if I'd speak about setting boundaries in the workplace. I'd never thought of myself as someone who gave talks, but I said yes. A few days later, another email came in. A small publisher wanted to license some of my blog entries for an anthology on women navigating difficult family dynamics. I forwarded the message to Lauren with a single line, "This still doesn't feel real." Thanksgiving was quieter this year. I hosted a small gathering at the beach house, just Ryan, Lauren, and 2 friends from work. We kept it simple. Baked ham instead of turkey candles instead of a centerpiece, and a fire going from morning to night. After dinner, Lauren curled up on the couch and said, "You've changed." Not in a loud way, but it's there. I didn't know how to answer. I just reached for the blanket and nodded. The blog kept growing. I updated it weekly, sometimes more when the mood hit. One entry in particular took off when the apology isn't yours to wait for. People shared it hundreds of times. The email responses filled my inbox for days. One woman in Minnesota wrote, "I never knew peace was something I could choose. Thank you." Sometime in early December, I noticed Chloe had changed the bio on her Instagram. It now said slowly, "Finding my way," and linked to a new website, something to do with sustainable styling. I clicked through. It was cleaner, more put together. Less flash, fewer selfies. I didn't message her, but I noticed. Later that month, Dad called. He never called just to chat, so I stepped outside to take it. He asked how the house was holding up with the winter storms. I told him about the new weatherproof shutters I'd installed. He asked if I needed help with anything. I said no, but thanked him. Then he said, "I told your mother you did the right thing, back then. I just didn't know how to say it at the time. I stood on the back porch holding the phone, the wind moving across the trees." "Thanks, Dad," I said. That was enough. On the Sunday before Christmas, I hosted a small gathering for neighbors. Marilyn and her husband brought hot cider. A couple from down the road dropped off cookies and stayed to chat. The beach house, once scarred and silent, felt warm again. I lit candles and played music low in the background, the kind my grandmother used to keep on the radio when we visited her in the summer. That evening, I sat alone on the deck, wrapped in a wool throw. The tide was low, and the moon cast a soft, silver line across the water. I thought about the version of me who first signed the mortgage papers, who stocked the fridge with Chloe's favorite snacks, and left fresh towels on the bed. I thought about the night I returned to the wreckage and stood in that hallway too stunned to speak. I no longer felt like I owed anyone silence. Sometime between Christmas and New Year's, Chloe sent a second message. Longer this time. "I know I hurt you. I handled it badly. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'd like to talk when you're ready." I read it 3 times before setting my phone down. I didn't answer. Not yet. But for the first time, it felt like she understood the weight of what had happened. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee while the sky was still dark. I opened my laptop and started a new post. I didn't answer Chloe's message right away. I let it sit for a few days, not out of anger, but because I wanted to make sure that if we talked again, it would be on new ground, not the old pattern of quick forgiveness and quiet resentment. One afternoon, just after the new year, I wrote back. Short and simple. "Thanks for saying that. I'm not ready to meet, but I appreciate the message." That was it. I didn't offer more, and she didn't press. For now, that felt enough. January was quiet. The beach house stayed booked most weekends, and I blocked off a few days just for myself. I spent those mornings walking along the shore boots, sinking into the cold sand, watching the fog roll in and pull back like a breath. In the evenings, I made simple dinners, curled up with a book, or worked on new blog entries by the fireplace. There was a comfort in the quiet I hadn't felt before, not just the silence of the house, but the stillness inside me. I added one last coat of sealer to the wooden table, the one my grandmother left me, the one Chloe scorched. The burn mark was still visible even with the refinishing. But instead of hiding it, I'd left it as a soft oval in the grain. It looked like a story you could run your hand across. By February, my relationship with Mom had settled into something quieter, too. We spoke more often, but with less effort. She'd ask how work was going, or tell me what she'd made for dinner, and every now and then she'd ask about the blog. One day, she told me she'd printed out one of the posts and mailed it to a friend who was going through something similar with her own daughters. It helped her, she said. And I think that's because it helped me too. Dad didn't say much beyond what he'd already offered, but that painting he brought still hangs above the fireplace. Every time I look at it, I think of that quiet visit of him, walking through the house with his hands in his pockets, nodding to himself, not needing to explain. As for Ryan, we kept building something slow and steady. He came with me on a few of the house trips, learning which way the wind shifted off the water and how to get the fire started just right. He didn't try to fix anything. He just showed up and stayed kind. Looking back now, I see that the house wasn't just a home I had to rebuild. It was a mirror. It showed me where I'd been too, forgiving, too quiet, too willing to clean up someone else's mess in the name of family. But it also reminded me that boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about protecting the space where you get to be yourself fully and without apology. I've stopped waiting for perfect apologies. I don't need Chloe to become someone different. I just need her to respect the space I've fought to create. And if she ever wants to stand beside me in that space, not asking for more, not taking from it, I'll be here. The beach house still smells faintly of lavender when the windows are open. The table still creaks when you lean too hard on one side. There's a small photo on the shelf now, one I took last fall, just the horizon line where the water meets the sky, no people in frame. I look at it sometimes and think this is what peace feels like. Not loud, not flashy, just earned. Thank you for listening to my story. And if you've ever had to draw a line to protect something sacred, whether it was your time, your home, or your peace, I hope you know you're not alone. Feel free to share where you're listening from or what this made you think about. I'll be reading. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to have you with me for the next story.